Good morning, ladies. I have a short devotion for you. As always, if the red live button is in the upper left hand side of the screen, we are live and we would love for you to tell us where you're watching from and offer any kind of feedback or questions. If you're watching and the red light is not on, you can still leave feedback and tell us where you're watching from. What I want to talk to you today about just for a couple minutes is why do we lose sight of our faith so easily? Why do we lose sight of, why is it easy for the enemy to just slip in and rob us of joy or all these different things when we've seen what God's already done? We mentioned on Tuesday talking about how the enemy can slip into your house and he can rob you of your marriage, your joy, your children to drugs and alcohol. Um, but David showed us how God told him when that happened to go back and take what was his, and he went back and got it, even so much as getting a lamb out of a lion's mouth, and the lamb was fine. Um, that's how hard he was willing to take back what the enemy had stolen from him, and we should be the same way. But I'm just going to start. I want to read to you in Exodus chapter 14. We're going to start with verse 10. Now, this is the children of Israel, and Moses has led them out of Egypt. And let's just listen to what happened. And when Pharaoh, and because Pharaoh is chasing him, Pharaoh's army is chasing them. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? So they have just now got on this trail where they believe God's taking them to the promised land. And look how easy and how quickly they're turning on Moses and they're doubting. Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Okay? The Lord shall fight for ye, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward, keep moving forward. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them. But it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea because they kept moving forward, which is what God told them to do, even though in their circumstances it did not look like it was going to end well. They're marching into the sea, and the Egyptians are behind them. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked into the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, and the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots, and the horses, and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left hand. Now, wow, they have witnessed a major miracle. Can you imagine? And step into the ocean. Your enemies are behind you. You go into the ocean. Just keep going forward. That took faith. Now they've grumbled and they've griped because when they saw the Egyptians, that the faith is down. Then when Moses directed them to go into the sea, they took that step. Okay, this has happened. Now, I want to share something with you from 3 days after this. 3 days after they have seen this miracle of God actually parting the sea, making the wall of water to just stand still on each side of them so that they are walking on dry land, and then come back in and destroy the Egyptians. Now, that this is a miracle. This is something that couldn't have happened in the natural. It's not something any man could control or do. This is a miracle. Now, 3 days later, if you'll turn to Exodus 15, and we'll start in verse 18. Get my glasses back. Okay. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. Okay. This is them talking about, well, and this may not be 3 days later. I apologize. That might be a little misleading. This is after the Red Sea. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. So I'm assuming that's some type of little musical clapper, something like that. And Miriam answered them, Sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. So here's the 3 days. Let me just adjust this a little bit. So 3 days ago, they saw this miracle of God, and they praised him afterwards, and they sang and danced and just honored the Lord because he delivered them. And he did it in a supernatural way. Like I said, there was nothing human about it, nothing worldly. There is nothing that can divide an ocean except for God. And then hold those waters, those walls of water. Can you imagine walking through that and seeing those walls of water, and there's nothing holding them back except the hand of the Lord? Awesome. But now, 3 days later, they haven't been able to find water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter, and therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? See, 3 days later, and they're already doubting. Where's their faith? What are we going to drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. And there he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Okay? Um, Look at how quickly we lose our focus on Christ, on God. Look at how quickly. I mean, I cannot even imagine the miracle of that parting of the sea. That is just something I can't even picture what that would have been like. Um, and yet, 3 days later, they're doubting that he's going to provide them water. They're murmuring. Isn't that what we do all the time? God shows us his glory in many ways all the time. Just waking us up in the morning is him showing us his mercy and his grace and it's glorious. And that opportunity to wake up every day. But he shows us so much more. There have been so many times where he's shown up in my life. Now, please don't get me wrong. I've had I've had my own good share of hardships, but you know what? When they mattered to me and I turned them over to him, he showed up. Um, I won't share the experience now, but there was a time in my marriage that it was just absolutely destroyed. Um, my husband wasn't even willing. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even in the same state. He took off. And you know what? I got serious with the Lord because I wanted to be honorable. I wanted to do the right thing. And I knew he was the only one I could trust. And he worked out several physical um, miracles that, like I said, I'm not even going to go into today. He kept putting people in my life, one a complete stranger, um, and he just sent her over to talk to me, and she led me through just a path of her own stories. And I actually began to change the way I prayed based on that encounter with her because I looked it up. It was scriptural. I would never take anybody's word for anything. And then another person that I just vaguely knew from the past who reached out to me and provided some scripture that I was able to hold on to, even though she didn't really know what was going on. So, I mean, God will work miracles. He will put people in your life. He will put things in your life. He will divide the sea. He will. I am. He has healed me of cancer. Um, he has healed other family members of things. I just there's too much to go into, but my point is, even after he's done all that he's done for me, I just shared with y'all on Tuesday that on Monday the enemy slipped into our house and he robbed um, a couple of us of our joy on Monday because we had gotten what looked like bad news, um, job related. And instead of just going to him like David did that day, he came back from the war to the camp and saying, "Okay, Lord, what's going on here? What should I do? How should I handle this?" We just kind of sank into, well, I'm going to be living on the streets now if I lose my job kind of attitude. And we are human, and that is going to happen. But my point is, the God that healed my marriage, the God that healed me of cancer, do I suspect that he cannot direct and guide me in the right way to go in this place that I'm in now? Look at going back to the verses just in chapter 15. Verse 21, Miriam answered them, "Sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea." They are praising the Lord in verse 21. In verse 24, they're murmuring, saying, "What should we drink?" They're murmuring from three verses. They went from praising the Lord, seeing his miracles, trusting in him, to beginning to murmur. And don't we do that? Don't we do that? One more example. I don't have the scripture ready, so I won't share the scripture, but Peter walking on water. He stepped out in faith and he was looking at Jesus and he's walking, and then all of a sudden he got distracted by the wind, the waves. I don't remember exactly what, but what he did was he took his eyes off of Jesus And when he did, it began to sink. How many of you out there today are sinking? How many of you out there today have let the enemy rob you of something? I just encourage you to keep your eyes on Jesus. I encourage you to take whatever that situation is to the Lord and ask Him how to deal with it. Ask Him what to do. Lean on Him. Trust Him. You know, sometimes He doesn't answer in the way we want, and sometimes He doesn't answer in the time frame we want. But I promise you, if you are saved, He is hearing you, and He has a plan, and nothing has caught Him by surprise. We just have to keep our eyes on Him. We have to stay focused on God in order not to sink. I'll see you guys next week.